Well, thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate that you choose to spend your valuable time with us. And because of that, we always strive to really deliver the goods. And today will be no exception. We're going to be having the pleasure today of talking with Wendie Donabie about negotiating as an artist and to save Mother Earth. So welcome, Wendie. I'm so excited for us to finally get this conversation rolling.
Thanks, Cindy, very much for being here. Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know her, Wendie Donabie is a force to be reckoned with. She is a gifted author, a talented artist, a gallery owner, an environmentalist. She's co-founder of Muskoka Authors Association, and she has a history as a board officer on several boards, too many to name over her career. And she's definitely a powerhouse within her community. She volunteers and leads just frankly too many organizations to even count. And in large part as a result of that, it's no surprise that she was honored for her work and recognized with a well-deserved Woman of Distinction Award for art, creativity, and culture. And Wendie's new book, Views from the Edge of the Earth, is being received with great critical acclaim. And we have the opportunity to pick her brain today. So Wendie, let's start talking about your latest book, Views from the Edge of the Earth. Tell us a little bit about what it is and what inspired you to put that out in the world.
Okay, so the book contains 78 poems and 76 images that are photographs of that I've taken of nature and also of my own paintings. And what inspired it is a long story, I think, because it really is, because I didn't think about this book really until a few months ago, but it's been in the works for a very long time. Many, many years ago, I spent an extended period of time in Cape Cod and fell in love with the ocean there and wrote a whole bunch of poems there that I put into a little chapbook that I've been out for a while. And so that already existed. And then about, I think 4 years ago, during the poetry marathon, the marathons that go on online once a year,
Fun.
I wrote a number of poems that were reflections of my paintings, because my paintings are all about nature pretty well. I mean, there's a few that aren't, but most of them are about nature. So I had all these poems that came out of those marathons, and then I had these poems about the ocean, and I also had other poetry. And as I started looking at the collection back, as I say, a few months ago, I thought, how am I going to organize this? If I did want to do a book, how would I organize this? And so I separated out everything that had to do with nature and said, oh, I think I have something. I think I have something that I can put in some sort of semblance of order that will make sense. And I've always wanted to do something that would be my kind of homage to Mother Earth, and maybe a very soft call to people about how much we have to care for her.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. The other thing that probably was very instrumental too, and it's the beginning of the book, was many years ago, an organization in town called Grandmothers to Grandmothers, part of the Stephen Lewis Foundation, used to hold a weekend event called Walking in My Mother's Shoes. It was held at the Red Leaves Hotel in Brasso. And for 2 years in a row, I wrote firstly about my mother. And the second year I wrote about my mother-in-law. And the third year I thought, what the heck am I going to write about? I had no idea. And then I thought, Mother Nature. I could write about Mother Nature as being the mother of us all. So I wrote this short piece, and I entered it into an art magazine competition, and it won first prize in that competition that year. And it now sits as the preface at the beginning of Views from the Edge of the Earth.
Yeah. I love it. It's funny you say you looked at it and said, I think I have something here. Well, you definitely do. I mean, for our listeners out there, definitely check it out. It is a gorgeous ode to Mother Nature. And, it starts with some dire warnings, but ends with such a message of hope. And I love, Wendie, that you dedicated your book to Mother Earth. And in particular, in your dedication, you said, may you continue to teach us how to live, like speaking to Mother Nature. What are some lessons you think we can take away from Mother Earth on how to live better?
Well, I think we just have to look at COVID.
Yeah.
And when the airplanes stopped flying, and how all of a sudden the air cleaned up, and animals started living more natural lives. They started moving into our environments more. We get so caught up in having to have everything fast and have everything mechanical. I mean, we have so many devices these days. I mean, I have them too. That we forget to look at nature, which is something we are part of. And she can teach us patience. She can teach us how to take care of ourselves and how to take care of her. It's all there right in front of us, but we don't pay attention to her enough with
Yeah.
our heart. We pay
Yes.
too much attention just with our eyes, and sometimes don't even do that, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's
there's just
lovely.
a lot I think we can learn
Yeah.
from
And it's
the natural
interesting
environment.
because, even people think, oh, it's a hooey and it's woo woo, but you are so much more productive if you take time each day to actually just be out in Mother Nature, even just for a few moments, right? To ground yourself. And there's no waste in with Mother Nature, I find. She is ruthlessly efficient in the most gorgeous way. And thank you for that reminder about COVID. I had frankly forgot that, Wendy, how quickly it happened that we started to see that regrowth and renewal again, which gave me hope that if we could take the lesson, there is definitely hope there. Now,
There's,
switching, yeah, go ahead.
so to say, there's two poems actually. I can't remember now which ones they are in my book, but there's one poem that does talk about that very thing you just said. And of course, it's gone right out of my head. But the first thing you mentioned was about Mother Nature not wasting anything,
Yeah,
and I did a painting called, yes, well, it's a stump of a pine tree that
yeah,
is just degenerated, and it's decomposing. But out of that stump, there's this new growth coming, because everything that's happening there goes back into the ground, and it
yeah,
and it makes nutrition for the next thing that's going to come.
yeah.
Right. So yeah. Anyway, that's what I wanted to mention.
Yeah. And it's quite miraculous, really. Actually, I hadn't thought of that until you just said it, but through all my various travels as well, like sometimes you see life sprouting out of the most unlikely places, deserts and barren landscapes, and suddenly these sprouts of green life or trees hanging on precariously to the edge of the cliff. And you're like,
Yeah,
wow, such
that's right.
tenacious. Now,
Yeah.
in some ways, I find writing is a form of negotiation with the reader, and I'm sort of switching gears on you here.
Yeah.
And I think there are things that you hope they think about and things you hope change their perspective. And I thought that was something that I assume you were very cognizant of, because your book really, I think, has a powerful impact. And I'm wondering for you, I mean, we all take different things away. What are some lessons that you were hoping that the readers would take away?
I think the first one is recognizing, as I mentioned, that we aren't separate from nature.
Yeah,
We're part of it. We're all part
yeah,
of this living organism of the earth. We interact, we're interdependent, and we forget that interdependency. That's one of the things. I think that's
it's
the
true.
most important thing.
Yeah,
And I hope that by looking at reading these poems and seeing these moments of beauty that I try and capture, they'll realize that if we don't start taking actions in our own homes and our lives and our lifestyles, those things are going to disappear. I mean, it's thousands of species. I don't have the
yeah,
statistics in my head, but thousands of species are disappearing every year from the
yeah,
face of the earth.
yeah.
It's a crime, and that's going to affect the ecological balance of
Oh,
the earth, because everything feeds off everything else,
yeah.
and we're a mess. And
Yeah.
if
And
one of
it
the
just,
poems, if it, yeah, sorry, just to say, one of the poems even says, the earth can live without us. It doesn't need us. We need it. If we all died off, if some
yeah.
plague took out all of humanity, the earth would say, okay, those parasites are gone. We can move on, and it would recover,
Yeah.
because it can recover.
Yeah.
And we just have to give it that space, and learn the things. There's so many projects out there, ocean projects and
Yeah.
land projects and air projects that are doing really good work,
Yeah.
but they're small little things really in the perspective of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, such a small thing can change, like 1 degree temperature in our oceans. I think it's like people still don't get the message. It affects absolutely everything, right? I mean, as the coral reefs die, there are millions of ripple effects that come with that. So, and I must say, like, kudos to you, Wendy, because when you say what you hope the readers took away, I mean, I certainly took that away and more. I mean, I love, this gorgeous planet we live on. And reading your book just reinforced that so much more powerfully for me. I thought the poetry was so lush and powerful and real and raw. And they talk about triple threats in theater. You are clearly a multi-threat. You write this beautiful poetry, you write such moving prose, you create stunning artwork, among your many talents. I'm wondering, how do you negotiate which of these get your attention on any given day, right? Hey, where to put your attention on these beautiful gifts you
Well,
have.
you happen to know me well, so you know that that's not easy for me. And of late, that's been really difficult, because we've had these other conflicting things that we're trying to do. But through your advice, I think that's moving forward. I'm going to try and implement. The only thing I can do is I'm going to have to schedule time because I'm finding I'm losing things. I haven't painted in months, and I need paintings. Every year I put out a calendar in the fall with my paintings. Well, I have one painting this year so far. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible admission, but I only have one.
Yeah.
I have one, two, three, four, five paintings sitting here ready to finish, but I haven't finished them. And oh, there's another one. There's six, I think, six altogether. So they would add to it. But then I thought, okay, what am I going to do? So this is just an aside, but I thought, well, this year for the calendar, I might just do it with poetry and photography. So it might be different.
Beautiful.
But how do I balance it? It's really tricky because I've got the gallery and I try to be open at least on weekends for that.
Yeah.
And then things come up on weekends, so I can't be open.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know how you do it. I don't know. I think scheduling is probably what's important, and then life gets in the way. But scheduling, I think, is what I have to adopt in some way.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. And in particular, because I think for I mean, that's always the case. And yet it's interesting for in the corporate world, it's sort of a given. People schedule, they schedule their meetings, they schedule those appointments, they schedule the to-do, everything is to do. And I think that our conditioning, we think differently for creatives and as creatives. So I love that you've mentioned that for our listeners. And I really want to put a pin in that for our listeners out there. If you are a creative and you are listening to this and that's something you're struggling with, don't be afraid. Scheduling is not like a big taboo word that only belongs in the traditional sort of business world. If you schedule your time, frankly, even schedule time with your family and friends in this busy world, make sure that those things that are most important to you are getting blocked off in your calendar so that they are getting the priority attention that they deserve. So thanks for sharing that and for being so vulnerable to share. It's not always easy. It's not always easy, right? So now you chose to pair your poetry, as you said, with your artwork in Views from the Edge of the Earth. How did you come to that decision?
Well, I think it was the influence of some people around me. What you being one of them, I believe. And it made sense to me because I thought it enhanced the poetry. Some of the poetry came from the pictures. So I thought it kind of made sense to put them hand in hand. And then, of course, looking at doing a book with pictures and color, that was going to be absolutely impossible because the cost would have been exorbitant. I couldn't have afforded to do it, and nobody could afford to buy the book after. So I decided to do it in black and white. And in hindsight, I was really happy that I did that because a subtle kind of subconscious message there is that's what's going to happen to our world. It's going to become this gray, black and white kind of world if we lose the beautiful color of nature. That's all it means. Yeah,
I thought that was powerful and stark because I had seen a lot of that original artwork in its, sort of full lush color, and then seeing it in the book as well. I'm like, oh, that really worked actually.
So the ebook is color though, because I decided, okay, when I do the ebook, I will put the color images in there. So they are
that way people can get both, you can,
exactly.
I mean, the ebook is so much cheaper. Get the ebook and have the hard copy of the book. Because I really do find it's the kind of book, even if you've just got a few moments before you go out in the morning, just read one poem every morning and ground yourself. I think it's, such a gorgeous thing. And also, I just want to put a pin for our listeners out there as well, because when you said about how you combined it, I find many creatives are talented in more than one area, right? And yet they see them as these separate silos and sometimes struggle to get their work out in the world or to prioritize which one to focus on. And I think it's a great message to the creators out there. Look for creative ways that maybe you can combine where there's synergies in what you're working on and how you can maybe make that work for you more effectively as well. Now, you talked about the balance piece, and I often say that negotiating our mindset is our, first and most important negotiation. So how do you negotiate, getting the motivation to create on days when, you get up and you don't feel it?
Sometimes I don't.
That's fair.
Sometimes I just don't. And it's interesting because I think, well, I want to go back to something you said, and I think this is part of it. It's not just about putting things in my calendar and scheduling them. It's also having some sort of goal in mind. And when I've done these poetry marathons, they've really been great because 12 poems in 12 hours is a half marathon. I mean, and I've done it 5 years. And I said, how did I do this? Because I could sit down here for an hour and do nothing,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that that's part of it. For the writing side, if it's got to do with just poetry, sometimes prompts are really helpful. I find if there's something that I see a prompt and that gets me, something inside stirs and say, oh, I think I can write about that.
Yeah.
And when it comes to art, it's kind of similar. I need to have something that sets a little spark off inside of me.
Yeah.
And it may be something I've seen, something I've taken a photograph of. Like that's usually where my nature pictures come from, is my photographs.
Yeah.
But the motivation is, I think, just getting started, because I know that if I start, something will come.
Yes.
And it's just making yourself sit in the chair or stand at the easel and start.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is a difficult thing to do, but that's what it takes.
Oh, that is so fair. And I want to repeat that for our listeners. If you sometimes, well, how did you say it? Sometimes if I just sit down and start, it will come. And that, I mean, I'm not an artist. I am so, jealous and in awe of people like you who can create these beautiful works. But I find even with writing, there are days when I'm like, oh, I don't know what, but you just sit down and start writing. And maybe the beginning is crap, and that's okay. And all of a sudden you find that you get those creative juices stirring, right? And I thought it was a great insight you just shared there, Wendie, about having a goal. I mean, some days just get started and see what happens, but it can be tremendously powerful and productive rather than just sitting going, what now? Okay, today I'm going to work on this, right? And then get to it. I think that's beautiful. Now, speaking of mindset, I think, a lot of artists struggle over, and probably more even than in business, although sometimes we see it there too, but really struggle over negotiating their mindset in terms of owning the value of their work. So what advice do you have about that?
Oh gosh, that's a really good one, especially when you're getting started. And the tendency there, I think, even with writing, or I think any form of art, I think we have a tendency to compare ourselves to other people.
Yeah.
And that is a danger. Like that's a red flag. Don't do it. I mean, if you can stop yourself, it's hard, but don't do it. We are all different. And our messages, whether it's whatever form of art it is, it's all unique. It's your own personal heart putting out there in some way. And no one's going to say the same thing or do the same thing you're doing, no matter what. We're not copies of each other. We're not carbon copies. Certainly not yet, anyway. Thank God. And so I think that's really important. Is just remember, you are unique. Just understand that. And even if you think it's not worthy, have someone else look at it. Have someone else give you their viewpoint. And even when it came to this book, days before we did the book launch, I was saying, what the hell? What did I do this? Is it any good? And then I'm starting to get calls from people and messages from people about how much the books meant to them and I'm getting this feedback now. I'm thinking, okay, phew, I guess it's okay. And when someone comes in and buys a piece of art, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, someone recognizes something in that painting, something that they can identify with. It means something to them. It has some worth and value to them. Then I can appreciate that. But I think it's that judgment part. I think that's really the hard thing to deal with, get over.
That was packed with great advice then, not comparing, which is so true in art and in life generally, frankly. I think we're guilty of that. And tied to that, I would add too, because as you were saying that, it struck me, we do so often take our sense of value from external sources, right? We're looking for that validation. And I love, like for an artist, to just fall in love with your own work unconditionally, right? Allow yourself to love it so that you, regardless of what sort of feedback is out there, that you have that sort of internal, unshakable belief in yourself and loving what you're doing. I think that's beautiful.
That's a really good point, because when it comes to my art, when it comes to the end of a painting, I know when it's over because I get this wonderful warm feeling and I think, oh, I love this. And there isn't a piece of art that I've done, I don't think, that I really, well, there's a couple that I really don't like, but most of them I do love. And even though they may not be commercially viable paint pictures, they're from me and they're expressing me, and they're good because they're, I can accept that now. There was a time when I couldn't, but I can now.
Well, and the beauty of art is it doesn't have to be. It's not like a mass produced something. It just needs to resonate with one person whose heart is drawn to it. And that's such a gorgeous mission, right? And I think sometimes, that scarcity versus abundance mindset, we see sometimes with creatives who feel like, oh, it's such a limited market and it's tough to make it. And they feel a little bit territorial about the business of their art, right? Seeing other artists as competition. Like you talked about that comparison piece. You always amaze me, Wendie. You are so generous in supporting and uplifting other artists and authors. I'd love your sort of experience about what positive, assuming it's positive, what sort of impact has that more collaborative approach had for you, do you think?
Well, maybe part of it, in all honesty, is easier for me to promote other people than it is to promote myself. But aside from that, I have always felt that part of my job as an artist in whatever form that takes is to support other artists.
Yeah.
And so I do that as much as I can, and you're right. I really do. If there's something on Facebook with a show coming up, I'll share it on my information,
Yeah.
somebody else's information, their book launches, whatever. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And I don't feel there's a competition there because again, we're going to attract different people. We're all unique. Again, it comes
Yeah.
back to we're all
Yeah.
unique. Our little environment is all different.
Yeah. And the irony I find in my experience, I mean, because again, we're very conditioned at first when we start being very territorial, we can't. And now I'm at the point, like I just share, like for my coaching business as well. It's like, you want to do work on purpose? I did a bunch of stuff on that. Here it is. Because, a rising tide truly does lift all boats. It's like, the more that people talk about art and the power of art, the bigger the market gets, which means there's more
Yes.
for everybody. So I
That's
love
true.
how much you do on that. And, we're talking a lot about that sort of how you feel that warm fuzzy with your artwork. And I think creative works, whether it's the writing process or with our art, it's so personal to the artist, right? Like when you put it out in the world for other people to see and to judge, do you find that impacts on the negotiation of selling your work? Like that emotion where it's that fear of people sort of dishing it or whatever, does that emotion impact on your ability to negotiate and selling your stuff?
I think it used to. I don't think it does anymore. I can be really very neutral about it. And when people come, for example, if they come to the gallery and they're looking at work, I leave them to wander.
Yeah.
And then if I hear them kind of talking, I'll get up and I'll go in and say, can I tell you about anything? And I will talk about a few of the paintings and other pieces of work. But no, not so much anymore, but definitely when I was at the beginning, for sure. That was an issue for sure.
Yeah, beautiful. And do you have any advice for people about like how you obviously got over that? Any advice for our listeners who may still struggle with, I don't want to put my work out there because if somebody criticizes it, I don't, and then I'm going to feel like I have to lower my pricing or whatever. Do you have any advice for how to deal with those feelings?
First of all, don't lower your price.
Yeah.
Never do not put your artwork on sale. Never put your artwork on sale. Your price is your price. That's the value. You put your heart and soul into it, and it has that value. Whatever value you put on it. And most artists at the beginning undervalue their work anyway.
Yeah.
That's very true. And I think the advice from Frozen is really important. Just let it go. You have to. I think you just have to let it go and say, it's not going to appeal to everybody. People will come here, and if they don't see what they like, I send them somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because I figure what I've got isn't right for them. Somebody else may have what is right for them.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. If they go there and they don't see what they like, they may come here and find something they like. So to me, I think that's all the advice I can give is just, you have to let it go and recognize that you're not going to appeal to every single person out there.
That's beautiful. And do you have any non-negotiable habits, for want of a better term, whether about your art or just living life? Any non-negotiables for you?
Like what I do no matter what, you mean? Kind of
Yeah,
thing?
like sort of non-negotiable habits, right? Like I make sure I do, some people may have gratitude practices or whatever. I mean.
Yeah, okay. Well, I do a lot of thanking. And I don't do it in a journal, but I do a lot of thanking. I'm very thankful for my life and the opportunities I've had and I have still. I've started, this is a routine I've started. I've been exercising every morning, and I think that's been really important. It's just half an hour, but I think that really gets me started.
Yeah.
And what else? I don't.
Well, they're pretty powerful.
Being thankful and that bit of exercise is really important. And keeping in touch with my friends, I think that is really critical. reaching out and making sure I'm keeping those lines of communication open with my
Yeah.
friends. Those are
Ah,
not negotiable. And that COVID did that to me. I think I
yeah.
realized sometimes your friendships count over everything else in your life, your
Ah,
relationship.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you know what's beautiful about that answer, Wendie, is that it's so simple, those things, right? And yet so few do it. I mean, being thankful, I've got to agree with you. I mean, that, and again, you know, when I was younger, I used to think that was just kind of woo-woo, the whole gratitude thing, but it is a game changer when you just, especially if you're feeling crappy in a moment, just taking a few seconds even to think about things that you can be grateful for in your moment. And there's no matter how bad things are, there are things that we can be grateful for. I mean, even though some of the worst off people in North America are better than, you know, 90% of the population in third world countries, right? So there's just so much to be grateful for. Gosh,
And breathing.
yes, yes, every day.
Yeah. Remembering to breathe.
Well,
Sometimes it's take a moment and just breathe,
oh,
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
true.
That's an important one too.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. And thank you for sharing about that breathing, because I think a lot of that, some of the things we've talked about, that nervousness about putting your work out there and being open, simple breathing is a way to be able to show up with more confidence in those discussions, right? It's a powerful and often overlooked tool. So
I
this has
have
been,
another one.
yeah,
Sorry. Okay. 1 second.
no, go ahead.
We got enough time?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So there is one thing. If people are nervous about something in any way, shape, or form, this has always worked for me. I visualize monarch butterflies flying in formation. And the instant I get that image, this
Yeah.
calm comes over me. Now, I don't know if that would work for
Oh,
everybody, but it works really, really well for me.
I love that. I love the monarch butterflies, and I also love your invitation to our listeners there. Find an image, whatever that is for you, that gives you that. I mean, we all have something that just makes us feel calm, grounded, or warm and fuzzy. What a great idea. Just call that image up and in the moment. Beautiful. So, and again, that's great advice for our listeners, not just in terms of negotiating as an artist or negotiating to save Mother Earth, but in all of your if you're about to have a difficult conversation with your kids or your intimate partner in business, just call up an image to get yourself grounded. I love that, Wendie. Thank you. Gonna borrow that one.
Okay, it's yours.
So I normally like to end, and this has been fabulous and gone so quickly. What is one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've ever had in your life? Doesn't have to be about this subject at all, just one
Boy,
of those moments that changes how you look at things or show up.
I think recognizing my own value. I think I undervalued myself for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I think recognizing that I had something valuable to offer just as a person, not even necessarily as an artist or a writer,
Yeah.
just as a person. And I think that was a mind shift for me.
Yeah.
Not looking to have tons of money or any of those things. If they come, that's fine and they're wonderful, but just valuing who I am and what I can just be and how I can give.
Yeah. Oh, oh my gosh, that got me almost teary-eyed there, because again, it should be such a simple thing, but we're so conditioned to beat up on ourselves and judge ourselves harshly, and just recognizing that internal value. You know, at the end of the day, we've all got a limited time on this earth, some more than others, but at the end, none of the money or any of that material stuff we're leaving behind matters, but living a life where we felt valued, a life where we felt grateful every day. My gosh, it's been such a powerful message, Wendie. So where can people find your book?
Okay, well, it's on Amazon, so they can find it Amazon in amazon.ca.com and UK, those 3 locations.
Beautiful.
And locally, it's available in Aurelia at the Manticore Bookstore, in Gravenhurst at the Shipyards, in Bracebridge at Unique Muskoka and My Gallery, and in Huntsville at Cedar Canoe. So
Gorgeous.
far. And
Yeah.
I'm working on some other locations around too.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, when Wendie says locally, she lives in Muskoka. So for any of you who are in Canada and Ontario, check them out at one of those locations locally. And don't be afraid to go in and ask your local bookstore to try and stock it as well. That's always a big boost for any author, to be able to have people requesting their work in those more traditional venues as well. So, and where else can people learn more about you, Wendie? Where should we be sending them?
I have 2 websites. Muskoka, not Muskoka. My name is Wendie Donabie, not Muskoka. WendieDonabie.com and WendieDonabie.ca. There's 2 different websites. One is the writing, more focused on writing, and one is more focused on my art.
Oh, so it's not a domain. Okay, good to know. So two for our listeners out there, .ca and .com, Wendie Donabie, and they're two separate websites. So make sure to check out both. And Wendie, I can't thank you enough. I know I feel better just having had this conversation. I feel uplifted myself, and I have no doubt our listeners did too. So thanks for joining and sharing.
Okay. Thank you, Cindy, very much. I really loved being here today. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, and for our listeners, I hope, my gosh, there were such beautiful gems in this conversation. You can see why I love Wendie. She's just so natural and authentic and generous of spirit, and it just feels good to be around her. So please give the gift of sharing. Share this episode with other people in your life who could benefit from showing up with, a broader connection with Mother Earth and all the benefits that provides. Make sure to check out Wendie's book as well, and we'll make sure to have all that stuff in the show notes. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done that. And just before we sign off today, wanted to share some ways we can work together. If you happen to be looking to negotiate a better life for yourself, up-leveling your negotiation skills so you can do that, I've got everything from online to group to my signature one-on-one mastermind experiences available to help you better leverage your innate power to get more of what you want and deserve. And yes, we all have that innate power. We just need to remind ourselves how to tap into it. And if that sounds interesting, check it out at artoffemininenegotiation.com, and make sure to grab a copy of my book, Art of Feminine Negotiation, if you have not done that yet. And that is a wrap for this episode. Until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care.